So should I go off the phone?
Yes, you're on right now, Sheikh. You can just begin with your video and begin, inshallah.
So it said stop my video. I should push that.
Yes, yes, please. And you're live, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Can you hear me okay? I didn't hear anything back. But I will begin. Inshallah, hopefully everybody's hearing me fine. And I'll go forward. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina al-mursaleen wa alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, it's a great pleasure to be with the youth, with the younger generation. And I want to share with you some very important information concerning where we are going and the importance of being Muslim. And we are in this COVID-19 and we're locked down in our houses practicing social distancing. This is something very strange. And people are crying for change. We're crying for change. People all around the world, and even Muslims. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us very clearly in the Quran, Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah will not change the condition of a people till they change that which is in themselves. So really, we're under a test. And this time while we're by ourselves and with our families, we need to really take a benefit from this and to correct ourselves. And this is really important for Muslims in relationship to the Quran, because we are going into a special month now, the month of Ramadan. And this is described as the month of the Quran. And one of the great scholars, Sidi Ahmed Zarruq, he said, if you want to be sincere to the Quran, if you want to really get the blessing of Allah in the Quran, there's three things. And he said, Tahseen tilawatihi wa tadabbur ayatihi wa itba' awamiri. He said, recitation, beautify the reading of the Quran. Read it according to tajweed. Secondly, he said, reflect upon it. Think about what's in the book. So when you get a verse, think about what it is. And finally, do it. Implementation means practice it. And this, inshallah, the blessing of our young child here, that you can see on the screen, I hope, to get that full blessing of the Quran. Some people just read it, but they don't think about what's inside the Quran. Other people sit around and they think a lot about it, but they don't do it. And we don't want to fall into these two categories. We want to be in the category of the people who read it, and after that, they think about what's in it, because Allah is giving us a lot of knowledge in the Quran itself. And then when we get that knowledge, then we practice the knowledge. So this really is the important thing. And I wanted to share with you some special lessons dealing with amazing stories in the Quran. Amazing stories. And from amongst these amazing stories, Allah has chosen certain insects to be the names of chapters and to be the focal point of chapters of the Quran. There is Surah An-Naml, this is the ant. There's Surah An-Nahl, this is the bee. And there's Surah Al-Ankabut, which is the spider. And I want to look at, in the next few sessions with you, to look at the ant and the bee. And if we have extra time, we could do the spider. But I want to look at the ant and the bee and to think about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala meant. What is the real importance of choosing an ant? And that might sound strange because the ant is really so small. So why would Allah choose a little ant to be, one of the mighty chapters of the Quran. This is divine wisdom. And so there are great miracles in the ants themselves. And I believe that we can get a lot out of this story. And so I want to put this to you. I came across this understanding when I was living in Cape Town in South Africa. And there's a lot of very active ants in Africa and in South America and in Asia, much more active than what you find here in the north, where it's very cold. And these ants are so active, if you put any food down, if you leave crumbs, then you turn around and there's a line of ants. So they're always watching, they're always moving around. And I thought about that when I was reading Surah An-Naml. And, why would Allah choose this ant to be the chapter title? Now, when we look at Surah An-Naml, and I'll go right into the translation with you. And this is verse number 15. And it's saying, indeed, we granted knowledge to Dawood and Sulaiman. And they said in acknowledgement, all praises for Allah, who has made us excel over many of his faithful servants. And Dawood was succeeded by Sulaiman, who said, O people, we have been taught the language of birds and been given everything we need. This indeed is a great privilege. Sulaiman's forces of jinn, humans, and birds were gathered to him, perfectly organized. Now look at the story here now. Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, one of the mighty messengers of Allah, and Prophet Sulaiman, his son, one of the mighty messengers of Allah. Sulaiman was a great Nabi, and he was also one of the richest people who ever lived. And Allah gave him, according to the Quran, not only just power in the world with people, but he taught him the language of birds. So he could actually speak to a bird. Think about that. And he also gave him power over the jinn. And the jinn, singular is jinni, they are creatures of smokeless fire. And so the jinn can fly, the jinn can move from continent to continent within a twinkling of an eye. The jinni can move around and it has amazing power. So when Suleiman moved his armies, it wasn't just human beings. He had jinn, he had humans, he had birds, he had all types of creatures. In this case, it mentions that they're perfectly lined up in rows. And then the Quran says in the Arabic, Hatta idha ataw ala wad an-naml, qalat namlatun ya ayyuhan naml, udkhulu masakinakum, la yahtimannakum Sulaymanu wa junuduhu, wa hum la yash'urun. And so then it said, and when they came across a valley of ants, an ant warned, O ants, go quickly into your homes, so Suleiman and his armies do not crush you unknowingly. So look at the picture here. The huge army of Suleiman alayhi salam is moving. There are human beings in rows. There's the jinn. There's birds. This huge army is moving, and it comes to a valley. Now, this valley was populated by a lot of ants, to the point where it's called Wadi an-Naml. So there's a lot of ants in this valley. And one of the ants notices this huge army coming. Now, you would think naturally that a small creature like an ant would just run and trip over its legs and run away. But no, the Quran, which is giving us divine knowledge that Allah knows, the ant called out, and she called to the other ants. And I'm saying she because the word in Arabic is namla. And so namla is feminine. So the majority of the ants are actually females. So she called out. She's calling to the other ants. Oh, ants, go to your homes, so Suleiman and his army do not crush you unknowingly. And so this has got some amazing understanding. And we'll be going over some of this. And I want you to take notes about the different things, that you actually see. What is the amazing qualities of the ants? Okay. The first thing is that the ant, she didn't think of herself. She thought first of the other ants. And so she calls out to the other ants and informs them about what is happening. And so this story of the ant is very important. And while we are looking for special qualities of ants, I want to share with you some amazing information. And I want to also challenge you that between this class and the next class, we will also finalize our understanding of the ants. I want you to do some investigation on the ants. And if you can look up ants, look them up, in your different, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's Google it, whatever it is, but Google ants, bring up pictures of ants. I found some amazing things. The ant is the most successful creature on Earth. And look at this picture here, and you see ant hives. So this is literally the houses of ants, or what you see on the surface, as the house of the ants. And it's amazing what these ants actually can do. Some of the interesting points about the ants. Number one is that, ants, there's about 12,000 known types of ants. 12,000 known, okay? So look at some of these numbers here now. There's 12,000 species of ants, okay? And these ants, they make up what is called, they're a huge number. If you took all living things, right, which would be animals, human beings, insects, and you put all of our bodies together, they call it a biomass, okay? So the biomass of the ants is about 1/4, 25% of all living things on Earth is actually ants. Think about this, because when you look at an ant, you just think of a little tiny ant, right? Look at that picture over there. These are all ants. And for every person on Earth, there's 20 million ants for every one of us. So think about yourself. There's 20 million ants for you on Earth. And these ants, they form colonies. And sometimes the colony can actually have 10 million ants in a colony. And the 10 million ants can actually go further, and they form what is called a super colony. And there you can have billions of ants. They're all connected together. So you got one colony and another colony, and they all move together. Because you know what the thing is about the ants? They think with one mind. One mind. So all of these ants here communicate together, and if they make a decision, they all are one mind. And this is interesting because that's the way most creatures are on Earth. Our bodies are made up of cells. So there are all different types of cells, that come together. And if you look, for instance, a sponge, right? A sponge is a good example. The sponge that are in the ocean. And if you break up the sponge, it's made up of a lot of little cells, a lot of little pieces of the sponge. If you broke them all apart and threw them in the water, then they'll all come back together to be one sponge. And so similarly, our bodies, our minds, we're made up of a lot of different materials, but we come together to be one human being. So this is a very important point now. Even though there's a large number, they think with one mind. Now, what makes them successful? I want you to think about Muslims today. Muslims make up over 26% of the world's population. 1.6 billion people on Earth is Muslims. We have millions of Muslims in China. millions in India. The largest Muslim country is Indonesia. In Africa, Muslims are the majority. Most Africans on the continent are actually Muslims. In Europe, there's millions of Muslims, numbers growing. In Canada, US, Caribbean, South America, all over the world, Muslims are all over the planet. But we have different groups who think differently. You have Indian Muslims, Arab Muslims, African Muslims, European Muslims, all different types. And even amongst the different groups, there are different types. You have different schools of thought, Hanafi, Shafi. You have a lot of different types of people. Now, if all of our Muslim people thought as one mind, that there was one leader, and whatever that leader decided with us, every Muslim in the world would do together, we would be the most powerful people on earth. We would be literally the ones who would run this planet. And that's the reason why ants are the most, or one of the reasons why they are the most successful creatures on earth. And ants live on every place in the world, every continent. Only one place in the world ants don't live. Can you think about that? Think in your mind. If I had sound here, I would ask you, actually, what continent do you think the ants don't live on? And I'll give you a hint. It has the word ant inside of it, inside of the name of the colony. You know what it is? It's Antarctica, which is the South Pole. So it's only the South Pole where the ants do not live. Every other place in the world, the ants are actually living. And so they're the most successful creatures on the face of the planet Earth. And the ants, they have some amazing communication. How can they be so successful? How can they communicate if you got so many? I mean, if you start talking, think about all those ants together. If all the ants start talking at the same time, how are you going to be able to communicate information back and forth? And if you've seen ants, look at them closely. I spent an afternoon when I was living in Cape Town. I sat down, and these ants, they like to move in our house. I put down some food, and I watched the ants moving along. And the ants communicated with their antennas. So it's the antennas. And here's the picture. You can see the antenna. And the ants are communicating with this antenna. The ants also have this ability to put out chemicals. So through their antennas and other parts of the body, they can release chemicals. So when they release this smell, the smell also tells the ant danger, everything's okay. The smell is a form of communications. So this is amazing what ants can do. And if you look at the picture on your screen, you will see that along with these ants that are on this tree branch, there are what is called aphids. So there are other types of creatures. And the ants are really the only insect that farms other creatures. So in other words, just like human beings have cows, and you go to your cow and you milk the cow, and you sacrifice the cow and you have meat, and you make cheese, the ants have aphids, these other creatures that release a sweet type of liquid. And so they use it like the same way you would get maple syrup from the bark of the tree. The ants actually have worms, and they have aphids, and they farm them like farmers. And they literally eat from them and they drink from them in the same way that human beings do that. Well, this is amazing, about the ants. Okay. Now, the ant also is a very powerful creature. And you would say, well, the ant's really small, right? How could the ant be a powerful creature? We ride horses, and we have oxen. The oxen, this type of bull, and the oxen is pulling different things. So we have creatures that are very strong, right? The oxen is very strong. The moose is very strong. The ant is actually stronger than all of these creatures in proportion to the body, because an ant can lift 50 times his weight or her weight, 50 times the weight. Look at this ant here in the picture and you'll see it's got crackers now. And that one little ant is carrying all of these crackers 50 times. Now, could you imagine if a human being could actually lift 50 times his weight? That's like taking a truck, right, and lifting up a truck. What would you call that person? There'd be a superhero, right? Some people would look at the person and give them like a suit, right? So they can be like Spider-Man or Batman. So in this case, there might be, you know, Ant-Man, whatever it is. I mean, that's a superhero. 50 times the body weight. There's different types of ants within the ant colony, and they respect each other. Some of the ants are the worker ants, mainly female, and they go out and they collect a lot of the things. They do a lot of the work. They're moving all around the place. But there are also some ants, and if you look on the screen, you'll see there are ants that do fighting. And they're actually built especially to fight. They have big jaws in the front. They have stingers. And so if there is a fight between the ants and another insect or somebody else, they will send these warrior ants out front in order to do it. There's also ants that have cutters, which can cut through sharp objects. Okay, so you have some ants, it's almost like having a tractor. It's like tractor ants. There are some ants that they're male ants. And these males, the drones, they are the ones that get the queen pregnant. There's one queen. Okay, the queen is the head of the colony. And the eggs for the baby is coming out of the queen. This is a picture of a queen ant. You don't normally see queen ants. The ants that you see are mainly the female ants. Sometimes you'll see the warrior ants, or you'll see the worker ants that have come forward in order, because there's a situation that the ants found themselves in. And there's all types of ants in the world. In certain parts of the world, the ants are really aggressive. If you live in South America, and the people who come from Guyana, or if you come from Venezuela, or especially Brazil, and I had a chance to be down in Brazil, they have a thing, this red ants. And the red ants move in the Amazon region. It's the jungle region. They will come, millions of these ants will move through, and they will eat anything that they want in front of them. And when the ants come into a village, all you can do is run away, because millions of them all over the ground are coming in, moving, looking for food, looking for different sweet things or whatever they want. And they move through the village, take what they want, and then they continue. And all the human beings can do is just run away, because fighting them is a waste of time, because they're so powerful. There's a special ant that came in the United States. And this ant, they're not sure where it came from, but this ant actually loved anything that was making a noise, like humming and electrical things. And the ant was going into factories and computer labs and eating up all the wires and destroying everything. It was unbelievable. It was a couple of years ago. It was causing a confusion. And they were trying to fight the ant to find some poison. But what was happening with these ants are so successful that what they will do is that if you lay down some poison on the ground and they're dying, the ants are dying, they will take the dead bodies of the other ants, put them over, and they walk over on top of it, walk over. They also, when they were poisoned by certain poisons, they adapted to the poisons. And so it didn't work. Finally, they were able to get rid of it, but it was an amazing fight that went on with these amazing ants. And the ants work together. And this is one of the important things. Think about your class Think about the masjid, think about our community, think about Muslims around the world. If all the Muslims work together as one, like the fingers of your hand, one finger is just a finger, but you put it all together and that's your hand, and you can do a lot of things with your hand. So the ants have amazing teamwork. They will do things that no other creatures can do. You can see in the picture how they, when they found an area, a leaf was separated from the branch, they actually took their bodies, strung them together, and they made a bridge. And they were able to crawl over the bridge. They find a huge piece of dung and they want this. And so they all come together, they work together as a team, and they're able to do it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Yadullah ma'al jama'ah. He said, the hands of Allah is with the Jamaat. And so they have this amazing unity working together. And you know, there was an experiment that was done, and it was done in Argentina. This is in South America. And they made a maze, a series of pathways. And they put ants on one side of the maze, and they had to go through all the different paths in order to get out the other side. And what they would do is that after a certain amount of ants would come inside, they would put down a door so they get stuck. And now they're all stuck inside of the door. Say there's 20 ants in front of the door. What they found out is the more difficult the circumstances became, the more polite the ants were with each other. Look at human beings. If you shut the door and everybody wants to get out, they start fighting each other, right? Ants don't do that. The more difficult it is the more polite they are. It's the more they care for each other. This is teamwork. And this is a quality that we are getting from the ants. The ants are able to do amazing feats. They're able to do things that we only, like I say, superheroes can do. Look at these pictures of ants. Go online and get pictures of ants and look at what this creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing. Look at the ants balancing on each other and sucking from the sweet plant. Look at the ants hanging upside down, how powerful they are. They can lift and hold 50 times their weight. And so they are amazing creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at this picture in a river now. There was a torrent that was going. This brown mass that you see here is the ants. Their colony was being destroyed by the water in a flood. And so they got together, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder, leg to leg, and they linked together until they formed a boat. And then they had the queen in the middle, and they floated down the river. Amazing. This is an amazing ability that these creatures actually have. And that is the power of the ants. So when you're living in an ant society, there's no revolution, there's no fighting with each other. Everybody respects each other and they work as a jamaat. So the workers, which make up most of the ants, they don't have to fight for their rights. They don't need to riot in the streets. They get their rights naturally. The queen is the queen. She doesn't have to go to charm school to learn how to be a queen, how to sit and how to eat with etiquettes. She's naturally a queen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made her the queen. And so the warrior ants, the worker ants, the tractor ants, the drones, all the type of ants that are in the colony, they work together. There is no revolution. Rebellion is a waste of time because everybody works together as one jamaat. And that you can see through the words of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hand of Allah is with the united body of the jamaat. Look at this. The hand of Allah is with them as they float down the river. The amazing jamaat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to the ants. So therefore, this is the reason why you can see that the ant is the most successful creature on earth. No other creature is like them in success. They have populated every part of this planet except Antarctica. It's only deep south where the climate is so cold that nothing can live in South America. And so I want you to write down your notes for the next class when I'm coming back. There's another quality that I wanted to talk about with ants as well. This is a very interesting one. I took the ants, there was 2 rows of ants going one way and the other way. Every time an ant passed another ant, she gave salams. How do they give salams? They don't talk. They're antennas, right? So they would touch antennas. And I sat there for a long time watching all the ants. Every time one ant passed another ant, they won't just pass the antennas because they're giving information, you know, they work as a jamaat. And what was interesting is that I noticed one ant was passing a group of 5 ants. So when it passed the group, it touched antennas with the first ant, and with the other ones, it just sort of nodded. It nodded to the other ones. It's like you meet a group of people, so you give salams to the Amir, to the main person, and then nodded to the rest of the people without having to shake the hands of everybody in the group. And this is an especially important thing. You know what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said? He said the time would come when there would be a salam al-khas. That is a special salam, which Muslim will only give to their brother or their sister or somebody from their family. This, of course, is a bad thing, but he said salam al-khas would come. And you can see it sometimes on Eid Day, for instance, where people should be hugging each other, right? Everybody should be hugging each other, but they might look for someone who looks like them or speaks their language, or then they will hug them and they look at somebody else and they don't really hug. But the Jamaat, the original Muslims, had all these qualities. They were able to love each other, even though the person doesn't look the same or doesn't speak the same language. They're not from the same family, but they are a true Jama'ah. So these are some of the qualities. And I want to just summarize the qualities, and you may have some yourself, right? The ants are in total submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? 2, they have excellent character. They have politeness. They're hard workers. They accept each other, even though they might be different. They are selfless, right? This is number 3, they are selfless. In other words, if there's some problem going on, they will think about other people before themselves. They'll always put the Jamaat before themselves. That's selflessness. They are also humble, humility and strength. The ant is a humble creature, but it is a powerful creature. Could you imagine if a human being could lift 50 times his strength or her strength? It would be Superman or Superwoman. Number 5, they always give salams to everybody. This is the ant. And I want you to think about what you saw. Mark down your points. And then we're going to relate to see how can these points actually relate to the Muslim world. Next class, we want to see how we can institute these in our life. Is this important to us? And how can we benefit from the ants? So you see, just in a chapter of the Quran, and just in one area where the Namla is mentioned, there is so much wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving to us, opening up. So while you are at home, go online, look up ants, read the stories of ants. Even if you want with your teacher, do a report on ants and connect it to the verse in Surah An-Naml where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this beautiful information. So this is our first class on the ants, and inshallah, the next time we gather, we will have the second class. and connect this information to our lives as Muslims. So I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on me and you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I hope everybody could hear okay. And that's the first class. And inshallah, next week, the next time we will go on for the next class to complete the story of the ants. And